Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast. In today's episode, we talk about Joe's experience at an Islander game when he was 9 years old. We then throw it to a segment on top 5 French fries out there. And then we finish it up by discussing Walmart's store within a store concept. And we actually have an extra guest in here today, which you'll hear throughout the podcast, and that's my son, Ryan. And Ryan, do you have something to say right now?
Yes. If you were to subscribe or follow our podcast, that would be very appreciative because you will be able to see the latest podcast that's get uploaded. And now let's start it, Joe.
And please give us a rating and leave a comment. We'd really appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thinking is Infinite podcast. This is episode 2, and this is Thinking is Infinite with
Joe
and John. And today we have a special guest, and that is
my brother.
Ryan will be joining us on this podcast a little bit as well. So, since this might be the first time you're listening to us, we'd like to reintroduce ourselves. This is a father-son podcast where we talk about, focus a lot on Joseph. So, Joseph, why don't you tell the audience who may be listening for the first time a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I already talked about this in the previous episode, but since many of you are probably listening for the first time now, I'll say a little bit again. I am an autistic teenager. I live in Belmore, and I actually have struggled with a bit with autism in the past. There have been many different things that I've kind of struggled with, which you can hear a bit more about in the previous episode that we did, but in short, it's kind of been a little bit of a rough ride here and there. I've now had to adapt, kind of evolve as I've moved on, and now I'm in a pretty good place, so.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're going to focus on each podcast, and as we go along and as the audience starts to listen to episode after episode, we won't introduce ourselves quite this way. But one of the things we like to do is to introduce ourselves, because the focus of this podcast is going to be a little bit on special needs and how a new parent with a special needs child can have a little more hope and a little understanding about what that kid with special needs may be going through. Because now Joe is a very unique kid with special needs because he can communicate exactly what he's feeling right now, whereas many kids, when they're younger, they can't communicate what they're feeling and how they're feeling. Right, Joe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if they have a sense of how they're feeling, that doesn't mean they can really communicate how they feel. It's kind of difficult, honestly.
Well, from a parent's perspective, we sometimes are stuck guessing what's wrong. We don't really know what's wrong. It makes it very difficult. And one of the things we hope to bring out in this podcast is a little more of an understanding and to give everyone out there some hope. So one of the things I'd like to talk about, Joe, is when you were 9 years old, I had taken you to a hockey game.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I remembered about that was it was a little bit of a difficult situation. I knew you were having a little problems at the game, and I knew the shelf life was short, and I knew I had to get you home. Now, if anyone knows Long Island, the Islanders at one point were playing in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. So Barclays Center.
Right, so we had to take the train in. Now, The train is something that Joseph was not used to back when you were 9 years old. So we had taken the train in, and about halfway through the game, I knew Joe was having some issues. Mm-hmm. So what I tried to do is try to get on the train before the game ended, where we had thousands of people on the train, where I thought you were going to have some problems. Unfortunately, when we got to the train station at the Barclays Center, on the way back to Jamaica Station, eventually to come home, we were waiting because they were waiting for the game to end. Now, that was a complete backfire on my end because all of a sudden there was thousands of people taking the train right around us. Mm-hmm. Now, we get on the train, we get in the seats, and then, Joe, do you remember how you were feeling at that point?
Well, I was kind of, having like a little, I was very upset I was very overwhelmed with the whole train. I was not used to crowds at that point. I was still very sensitive to crowds at that point. It wasn't until I was around like 10 to like 12 when I actually got used to crowds. It happened more gradually, but at that point I was still very sensitive to them. So it was very overwhelmed. I couldn't really handle it. I wanted to get off the train actually at a different stop.
Exactly.
And then maybe even go back from there.
I remember that, and what Joe was saying, he was yelling at me, and you were starting to swing your arms at me, and this is a packed train, so I knew the next stop was Jamaica Station, and if we got off at Jamaica Station, it would take even longer to get home. So I was trying to remain calm. One of the things that you learn as a special needs parent is I fail sometimes at it, but the main thing to do to have success is to stay calm. And I know I've failed at that on some occasions. Sometimes I rev up just as much, but on that case, I was trying to do my best to remain calm. Now, as things progressed, we ended up getting to Jamaica Station, and by the time we got to Jamaica Station, Joe, you had calmed down quite a bit. But that trip from Brooklyn to Jamaica Station felt like an hour to me, because Joe was...
Yeah, even to me as well.
Yeah, you were flailing your arms and things like that, and then all of a sudden...
We see a guy...
Well, no, what happened was, I remembered hearing a commotion, two people arguing in front of us. One guy yelling at another man, and I had no idea why. So, as the train started to dissipate, I had realized that there was some kind of commotion between a gentleman 2 rows ahead of us and a gentleman 1 row ahead of us. And I heard him say something along the lines of, "Why are you recording him?" And then I had realized that there was a man recording my son Joseph as he was having a meltdown on the train. And I thought that was such a terrible thing to do, but I was so focused on trying to get Joseph to stay calm that I didn't even realize it was happening. That man eventually got off the train, what I think it was a jerk for recording a child who was having a difficult time. And one of the things I remembered is, as the train started to dissipate, as we started getting closer and closer to our stop, Joe, you had gotten so calm, and that was so great, and that made me feel so good that he had calmed down at that point. But I remember walking up to that gentleman, and I said, "Thank you so much." And that guy said something to you. He's like, "Hey, is this your first hockey game?"
Yeah,
you were like,
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? He's like, "No," and you were like, "No, it's not my first hockey game." And I remember getting off the train, and I remember getting back to my place at that point after dropping you off, Joseph, at your home. And I remember just being so tired, but also I didn't thank him enough for what he did, how he defended you. And I remember putting together a post and said, "Listen, if anyone knows this man on this train, can you please, thank him for me?" Because I thought it was such a kind gesture to defend my son, that he was being recorded at the time. And about 5 or 6 hours later, a friend of mine messages me on social media, on Facebook, and he says, "John, my friend was on that train." And the gentleman's name, it was Chris. And I reached out to Chris, and I let him know that you said thank you. Well, Chris's wife ended up messaging me and saying, "Oh my God, that was my husband, and he's a police officer for NYPD."
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more proud of the NYPD, because here's a man who had gone to the game just like me and was taking a train home, and he was not in a uniform, and he stuck up for you. And I thought that was such a wonderful moment, that there are people out there that stick up for people with special needs.
Or any kind of people in general. Like, there are people who do that. As well as, of course, there are always people who are just going to be jerks because they want to be, but there are also people who stand up against those types of people,
Yeah, and one of the things that, one of the big lessons that I realized that night is just as there are some people out there that are going to judge and may take videos and may do things that are inappropriate, there's a lot of kind people out there that do the right thing, that stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves at that moment. And neither you or I could have stood up for ourselves at that moment, because I was trying to calm you down and you were having a difficult time. So, one of the biggest, happiest ending to this whole thing is now Joe has improved quite a bit. And Ryan, why don't you tell him about when you saw your brother on an airplane this summer?
So we went to the Bahamas, and on both flights we went on Delta and we went on JetBlue. Both flights, he was sleeping on the plane the entire time, and his window was closed because I guess he didn't want to wake up from the sun. So, like, he was sleeping probably the entire time. I was not sleeping, obviously, because I felt my eardrums were going to literally pop out and explode. Because, especially on the JetBlue flight, because we went from, like, 1,000 feet in the air to, like, 200.
Well, one of the things that, and I'm so happy to hear Ryan say it, and not so much Joseph, is Ryan is his younger brother and wasn't at the game that night, and has watched Joe grow up and watched Joe in the house, and Joe was the calmest kid on an airplane. So that is fantastic, Joe. And Joe, do you want to have anything else left to say about your experiences and how you're dealing and what you do differently that you can handle something like an airplane or a crowded situation?
Well, it's kind of, oddly, it's been kind of like gradual. It hasn't really been sudden. Like, I've kind of had to kind of grow up, like, very slowly. Oftentimes, like, I think crowded situations, like I said, I wasn't fully able to handle that till around, like, 11 or 12, but I slowly began to improve after the Islanders game. To the point where now I can go into a crowded situation and not feel overwhelmed or anything. Like, I've gone to, like, a party before, I've gone to certain crowded events like football games, baseball games, those kind of things, and now I can handle it much better. So it just kind of takes a bit of time. So,
well, and I know he's been better in communicating to us when he feels. I know you do it to me. I'm sure you do it with your mom, but you actually tell people that you're having a tough time and you want to leave and you want to get out of a situation that you feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot better at that as well over the years.
That's awesome, bud. And that concludes this segment of Joe and I talking about some of the things that we've experienced with special needs, and Ryan also.
Now on to the next segment.
Hi, and welcome to the segment that we will be calling our Top 5 segment. And here I am with my son Joseph and my son Ryan, we are going to be talking about the topic that they want to do their Top 5, and which is going to be the top 5 French fries that they have in their minds. So I'm going to lead it off with Ryan, and Ryan's going to tell us his top 5, and then Joseph's going to tell his top 5. So why don't you take it, Ryan?
All right. So McDonald's is my number one because those fries are the best. Like, you can't say anything else. Then second, it would be Smash Burger because that's a good restaurant. 3 is Burger King. They're not as good as McDonald's and Smash Burger, but they're still good. Wendy's, they're never put salt on them, so that's why it's number 4. And KFC's 5 because those are not too good. Now let me hand it over to Joe.
So let me ask you something before I let Joseph go. Okay? So what makes the McDonald's fries the best out there?
Because they have so much salt.
Oh, it's the saltiness. So
yes.
The ones that aren't so salty are the ones you don't really like too much.
Yeah.
All right. I respect that.
Makes sense.
Hand over to Joe.
So my top 5, and number 5, we have Burger King. Burger King fries are very bland. I feel like they're not very, they don't have a lot of flavor to them, and they're, oddly hot. Like, when you get them, they're always, burning hot, you know? You feel like your tongue's gonna burn off if you eat them too quickly. You gotta, wait a little while for them to cool off. They have gotten better over the years, but they still aren't exactly the best. Number 4, Smash Burger. Smash Burger's fries are okay, but they're not, really amazing. Nothing really stands out about them. They're just kind of fries, you know? They're decent fries. Number 3 is actually Wendy's. Wendy's fries are very unique in that they're not very salty, but they also taste different than, regular fries. If you taste a Wendy's fry, you can immediately tell the difference. I can't really even describe it because it's not like any other fry. The taste is very weird if you think about it. It almost has
a bitter taste to it.
Yeah.
Almost
right?
bitter,
Yeah.
but not, too bitter, you know?
No, I know.
It's very, it's kind of in the middle. Number 2 is actually McDonald's. McDonald's fries are actually really good. They have very good, saltiness. It's very, crunchy on the outside, very, soft on the inside. But I feel like there's one fry that's even better. Number one is actually KFC. I love KFC fries. I actually think that they're actually really good because they actually use like more like seasoning. It's not just salt on there. Mm-hmm. It's also like pepper and other things. So I actually really liked the KFC fries.
The best, huh?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so we hand this over to Dad.
Well, actually, what I'd like to talk about is, Joe, you have a saying. Every time I try to reach into your French fry little bucket there that they give you, and what do you always say when I try to grab them?
Don't do that.
No, there's something else. Never touch another
man's fries.
So Joe
that was
always
a meme.
Yeah. So he always says never touch another man's fries. So I had to improvise, okay? Now, through the years, I've learned to be able to get Joe's fries. I'm revealing something right now on this podcast that I've never told Joseph before. So when the bag comes into the car, okay, what I can do, I have two different moves. One move is...
You take the fries out of the bag.
One move is, it's called the Houdini, okay? I palm them like a magician, and I give Joseph the fries, but I have a few fries in my hand, okay? My second move is to dump a few in the bag before I take them out and give them to Joseph, because then I can get some fries. So I never touched another man's fries, but I have a way of getting them before I hand them over to Joseph. Now, why I do that, what I used to do is I used to wait until you guys are done with your food, and then I would eat whatever was left over, because one, I don't like wasting food, thank you, and and two, I still want some fries, right? Now, your other brother, Mr. Jake, stopped me from doing that. Do you know what happened?
Yeah.
All right, so here's what happened. So Jake had some fries left over on his plate. I went to eat them, and they were wet.
Because he spit on them.
No, he didn't spit on them. He goes, Dad, I licked them all. So that was it. I would never eat fries off a kid's plate ever again after that. So, parents out there, little tip, you palm them like Houdini before you give them out to your kids, or you dump a few in the bag, and you can always get fries.
Really want fries.
Right, guys?
There you go.
And speaking of French fries, Joseph would like to incorporate not only French fries, but also his business report and kind of merge them all together. So, Joe, I'm just going to kick it off to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, so for those of you who don't know, Walmart opened McDonald's locations inside a lot of its big box stores, actually hundreds of them, starting in around 2009. Now, what's happening recently is that the Walmart locations... the McDonald's inside of the Walmarts are now starting to close, and they're now starting to open a bunch of different types of fast food and other types of chains in order to fill that gap.
So let me ask you something. Why did McDonald's decide to close from the Walmarts?
Good question. Answer to that is that the answer to that is that they want to focus more, McDonald's wants to focus more on its drive-thru locations, and Walmart is now starting to get into curbside pickup, so not as many people are going inside as going, just picking it up curbside.
That makes sense.
So now, McDonald's is starting to close a lot of those down, leaving empty space inside of the Walmart stores.
So, what is Walmart going to do with this extra space?
They're opening a variety of different, not only fast food restaurants, but also other shops that have to do with the local community. I actually read a bunch of articles about this. They're opening Domino's, they're opening Taco Bell in some, they're opening a mini Wendy's in some.
Ryan, you'd like to say something?
Alright, so about that, so since the McDonald's are closing down, there's going to be a big space in Walmart, so there's going to be Wendy's, but there's only going to be in some locations. So one location will have one store. So there's going to be Taco Bell in one store, there will be probably Wendy's.
Well, one of the things that I would like to ask Joe is, you made mention in that last comment that you had was there might be some local stores. What's Walmart thinking to do? Are they thinking to put a local mom and pop store into a Walmart? How is that working?
Good question. The answer is that there was actually sometimes they put tool repair section, for example, in a location in a town where it made sense to have them. Mm-hmm. So that's a good example of that. So they're essentially going to open whatever the local community kind of wants or desires. So, like, that tool repair section might go into the McDonald's instead of, like, another fast food chain, or there might be a fast food chain in there. And I've heard they're actually opening a bunch of different things inside a variety of their locations. So it's not like there would be maybe like a Domino's in one, Taco Bell in another, Auto Repair in another. Those kind of that variety of different small stores within stores inside of those Walmarts.
So from the last podcast that you were discussing the store inside the store. It seems like it's becoming a common theme where there's actually a lot of these big stores like the Targets, the Walmarts, and the Kohl's are starting to bring in other stores within their store. That's a very interesting strategy.
So another thing, Kohl's has Amazon, so you can return stuff from Amazon and Kohl's. Target has Starbucks and Pizza Hut and some Targets, and then Walmart is going to have a variety of different stores.
You know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that, Ryan, because when I was re-listening to the podcast after we had recorded it, the first thing I thought of was, why didn't I think of Amazon and Kohl's? One of the things Kohl's does is that you can return if you get something from Amazon, because one of the challenges with Amazon is if you buy a pair of sneakers from Amazon, you don't know how they fit until they come, right? So they come and they don't fit right. So then what you do, where are you going to bring them back? Now, Kohl's did something very smart. When you go and you return the box of the shoe box that doesn't fit through Amazon, you go to their little Amazon kiosk. Do you know what they do, Kohl's does?
Well, they put it at the the back of the store so that you have to walk through the store to get to it.
Yep. Do you know what else they do?
And they also have strategic departments located on the way there.
Well, one, they do make you walk through the whole entire store to get to it. In the Kohl's,
and they make it near the customer
on the
service
second floor
section?
No, not only that, they give you Kohl's cash. They give you big coupons so you can now spend your money in the Kohl's, which I think is a genius move.
It actually is.
Ryan, thank you for bringing that up, because you know what? I had forgotten all about that.
Kohl's Cash, you can't just immediately spend it. Kohl's Cash, it has a date to a date.
Yes.
So, say I get Kohl's Cash today, it could start September 27th to October 17th.
Do you know what the strategy behind that is, Ryan?
So you can't just spend unlimited money when you get Kohl's Cash.
Not only that, but that makes you go back. It makes you go back to the store because you're like, I have this Kohl's Cash of $25 or whatever they give you, and then you go back to the store. So it's actually a very smart strategy to not give you the Kohl's Cash for that day because it forces you to go back there. So I really think that's a very intelligent move by Kohl's that we failed to talk about in the last podcast. I had totally forgotten about
Amazon.
it.
Me as well.
Kohl's, Jeffrey Bezos.
Actually, I kind of forgot about that as well, because the Amazon return section is kind of like a small desk. It's not really like a store within store type model, but not like the traditional type of the thing that they're mainly expanding into recently. But yeah, many stores are now starting to do that. Many big box stores and smaller stores, it kind of benefits them both, because the big box store gets another category in that they can use to draw customers into the store, and the smaller store gets the benefit of kind of latching onto a larger big box chain.
Well, I love the idea of incorporating something within that town or something that's unique to that area and letting a small business at least get some what they call foot traffic from a Walmart, where someone could walk in and go, oh yeah, that's the business that used to be down the road. So what Walmart could do in a very intelligent way is to gain a lot of good will towards a community by letting the small store work within their big store. I don't know how that would work. Is that something they're even doing, Joe? I know you do a lot more work on reading the stuff than I do.
Well, kinda, but I don't think they're incorporating I don't know if they're incorporating small businesses into it, but I do know that they are trying to kind of tailor the vacant McDonald's spaces to the community itself. I don't know if they're doing the small businesses or not. I haven't really gotten any info on that, but I do know that they are trying to tailor to the specific community that the Walmart's located in. And that concludes this week's episode of Thinking is Infinite. If you like this episode, please make sure to give us a good rating, and make sure to follow us on Thinking is Infinite. You can search it up on Spotify, Apple Podcast, any podcast platform that you can think of. See you guys next week. Bye!